"Don't open that coffin," the Orc Undertaker said. Dr. Elias had already lifted the lid. The woman inside had been buried 3 days ago. Her skin was cold, her white burial dress was streaked with grave soil, and a spray of dried lavender rested between her folded hands. Then her chest rose. It was barely a breath. A shallow pull of air so faint that any other man might have mistaken it for the movement of his lantern flame. Elias had spent 15 years watching life leave human bodies. He knew the difference between imagination and breath. The dead woman opened her eyes. Her cracked lips moved. "Vara," she whispered. Elias turned toward the tall figure standing at the entrance of the burial chamber. Vara did not look surprised. Rain dripped from the edge of her black hood. She was a mature orc woman, tall and powerfully built, with deep moss-green skin, 2 ivory lower tusks, pointed ears, and amber eyes that seemed almost golden in the lantern light. A thick black braid rested over one shoulder, threaded with small iron rings. Her fitted funeral coat was buttoned to the throat, and black gloves covered both hands. Most people in Belgrave crossed the street when they saw the Undertaker coming. At that moment, Elias understood why. "Close it," Vara said. The woman in the coffin drew another broken breath. "She's alive." "I know." "You know?" Bootsteps sounded above them in the cemetery. More than one pair. Slow, deliberate, coming closer to the stone stairway. Vara crossed the chamber in 3 long strides and pulled the coffin lid from Elias's hand. He caught the edge before she could lower it. "What are you doing?" "Keeping her alive." "By closing the coffin?" "By making certain the men upstairs believe she is still inside it." The bootsteps reached the top of the stairs. Vara leaned close enough that Elias felt her breath against his cheek. "If you want to save her, Doctor, stop arguing and lift." There was no time to demand an explanation. Elias slid one arm beneath the woman's shoulders while Vara gathered her legs. Together, they raised her from the coffin. The body was stiff with cold, but not with death. Beneath the bitter scent of lavender, Elias detected something sweet and medicinal on her breath. Vara carried most of the weight. She moved toward the rear wall, kicked aside a loose stone, and pressed her boot against a hidden iron lever. A narrow panel opened soundlessly between 2 shelves of burial jars. Beyond it lay darkness. "Inside," she ordered. Elias carried the woman through the opening. Vara followed and closed the panel just as lantern light appeared on the chamber stairs. The hidden passage was barely wide enough for her shoulders. Elias could not see his own boots. He heard the scrape of the outer coffin lid, then a man's voice asking whether the burial chamber had been disturbed. Vara's gloved hand found Elias's chest in the dark. "Do not move." He remained still, though the warmth of her palm made that more difficult than it should have. The men outside spoke quietly. One wanted to inspect the coffin. The other said the mayor had ordered them only to confirm that the grave remained sealed. A heavy object shifted. Then the footsteps withdrew. Vara waited until the cemetery gate clanged shut. Only then did she remove her hand. "This way." The passage descended beneath the funeral house and opened into a stone preparation room. A coal stove glowed in one corner. Shelves held folded linen, glass bottles, and surgical tools far cleaner than Elias expected to find beneath an undertaker's home. In the center stood a narrow wooden table. They laid the woman upon it. Elias removed his coat and placed 2 fingers against her throat. The pulse came slowly, once every several seconds. Her pupils were narrow. A dark violet stain marked the base of her tongue. "Bring me warm water, clean cloth, and every lamp you have." Vara did not move. "Please," he added. She turned toward the shelves. As she worked, Elias loosened the burial dress at the woman's throat and listened against her chest. The heartbeat was weak, but regular. Her breathing had been deliberately suppressed. Not a natural illness, a drug. He examined her hands. There was soil beneath the nails, but no torn skin. She had not awakened long enough to claw at the coffin. That was either mercy or careful calculation. Vara returned with a basin, blankets, and 3 oil lamps. "Can you wake her?" "Not quickly. Whatever she was given slows the heart. Warming her too fast could kill her." "Then do it slowly." Elias looked up. "How many?" The Undertaker's face became unreadable. "How many people have you buried like this?" he asked. "That is not the question you should be asking." "It is the only question I have." "Then you will get us both killed before sunrise." She removed one black glove. Her hand was green like the rest of her, but pale lines crossed her palm and fingers. Not random scars, burns in the shape of thin branching roots. Vara placed that hand over the woman's sternum. Her amber eyes closed. For one impossible second, the room became silent. The stove stopped ticking. Rain vanished from the roof. Even Elias's own breathing seemed to retreat. Then Vara whispered, "She is caught between. The drug holds her body down, but something beneath the cemetery is pulling at the life still inside her." Elias stared at her burned palm. "How could you know that?" "Because the dead do not speak to me." Her eyes opened. "The almost dead do." The woman on the table suddenly coughed. Elias rolled her onto one side. Dark liquid spilled from her mouth, staining the white cloth violet. Her whole body shuddered. He supported her head until the coughing eased. When he lowered her back, Vara was holding one of the stained cloths near the lamp. "Nightbell," she said. "The flower?" "Its roots, boiled with grave salt. That mixture is forbidden. So is burying people alive." Elias took the cloth. Nightbell grew in marsh soil and was sometimes used in tiny amounts for surgery. Too much created a death-like sleep. Grave salt would extend the effect. The recipe required skill. Who prepared it? The same person who sent men to check the coffin. The mayor? Vara pulled her glove back on. "You said that name, not I." Above them, a bell rang twice from the town square. Midnight. Elias had arrived in Belgrave only 4 hours earlier. The Crown's medical office sent him after 11 people died in 12 days, each without fever, injury, or visible disease. The mayor's letters described a possible plague and requested a doctor with experience in unusual contagions. Elias expected panic, crowded sick rooms, and frightened families. Instead, he found a quiet town wrapped in fog. The streets were clean. The tavern was full. No one coughed. No houses bore quarantine marks. Yet black ribbons hung from nearly every door. The mayor welcomed him personally, offered a room in the largest inn, and supplied 11 immaculate death records. Every victim had been examined by the same local official and buried within a day. Every burial had been handled by Vara. When Elias asked to inspect the newest body, the mayor discouraged him. When he insisted, 2 guards led him to the cemetery and pointed toward the underground chamber. Vara had been waiting beside the coffin. He had assumed she meant to obstruct an investigation. Now a buried woman breathed beneath her house. "Why did she say your name?" Elias asked. "Because I warned her." "Before she was drugged?" "The afternoon before her death, she came to arrange her husband's burial. She said he had collapsed after drinking tea at the mayor's office. When I touched his hand, I felt warmth beneath the cold. I told her not to let anyone take food or drink from that house. Her husband was one of the 11? The 7th. Did you bury him alive?" Vara's tusks became more visible as her jaw tightened. I placed him in a coffin because 6 armed men watched me do it. Then I returned after midnight. Where is he? Dead. The word carried weight. He woke before I reached him. The air pipe had been blocked. Air pipe? Vara took a lantern from the wall. Come. I am not leaving her. Then remain ignorant. She started toward the hidden passage. Elias looked at the woman. Her pulse had strengthened slightly, and her breathing was steady beneath the blankets. He arranged a cushion to keep her head turned, took his medical bag, and followed. Back in the burial chamber, Vara lifted the coffin lining. Beneath the lavender and white cloth lay a silver tube no thicker than a finger. It entered through a carefully drilled hole near the dead woman's shoulder and disappeared beneath the coffin base. This is not an air pipe, Elias said after examining it. It carries air. In both directions. The inside of the tube held traces of gray crystal. He scraped a little onto his glove. The particles were warm despite the cold chamber. The silver conducts something, he said. Life. Life is not a substance carried through metal. You watched a dead woman breathe. I watched a drugged woman breathe. Vara leaned one hip against the coffin. Human doctors are very brave when the impossible has not yet bitten them. Orc Undertakers are very mysterious when a direct answer would be faster. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched her eyes. It vanished quickly. She followed the tube to the floor. A section disconnected beneath the coffin and entered a narrow channel cut into the stone. The channel ran under the chamber wall toward the oldest part of the cemetery. Every recent grave has one, Vara said. Each line points toward the hill. At the center of the hill stood the mayor's family mausoleum. Elias looked toward the ceiling as if he could see it through stone. Why not go to the town guard? The guard takes orders from the mayor. The crown? Letters leave through the mayor's office. Then why request an outside doctor? Because too many people began asking why healthy relatives were dying. He needed someone respectable to confirm a plague. Elias remembered the prepared death records, the comfortable room, and the unopened bottle of wine waiting beside his bed at the inn. He intended to drug me. You finally understand quickly. Why are you still alive? Because everyone already believes the Undertaker is cursed. If I accuse the mayor, they will say I caused the deaths. If I disappear, they may become curious. So you have done nothing? The question left his mouth before judgment could stop it. Vara became very still. I opened 6 graves, she said. I saved 2 people and hid them beyond the marsh. I found 4 too late. I slept beside coffins to hear breathing through wood. I lied to families so they would not be arrested for helping me. I burned every bottle of Night Bell I could find. And 3 nights ago, I watched a husband die because someone filled his air pipe with wax. Her voice never rose. That made the shame sharper. Elias lowered his gaze. I am sorry. Do not apologize because I frightened you. I apologize because I judged work I did not understand. Vara studied him for a long moment. That is a better answer, she said. They returned to the preparation room. The woman had begun to sweat. Elias checked her pulse, mixed powdered charcoal with water, and coaxed a little between her lips. Vara sat across the table, watching every movement. You know enough medicine to maintain this room, he said. The dead deserve cleanliness. These instruments are for the living. The almost dead are inconveniently undecided. Again, that flicker of humor. Elias found himself wanting to see it remain. I need my case from the inn, he said. There are stimulants, sterile needles, and a listening horn. You cannot return. The wine in your room will be untouched. Someone will know the drug failed. Then I will say, I dislike wine. Do you? No. You are a poor liar. I am an excellent liar. I simply prefer truth. Those are usually the men who lie worst. The woman murmured on the table. Elias leaned close. Her eyelids fluttered. Under the hill, she whispered. She is still there. Who? His wife. Vara's face changed. The woman's eyes opened, unfocused. She has been dead for years, but she keeps taking our breath. Then she slipped back into unconsciousness. The coal stove cracked softly. Elias turned toward Vara. You knew. I suspected. The mayor's wife is in the mausoleum? No funeral was ever held. He announced she had gone south for her health. No one has seen her since. How long? 9 years. Elias looked at the silver tube visible through the open passage. 11 sudden deaths. A hidden network beneath the cemetery. A woman dead for 9 years, who continued taking breath. Medicine could explain the night bell. It could not explain warm crystal inside cold silver. Not yet. We need to enter the mausoleum, he said. Vara shook her head. Not tonight. Every hour we wait, someone else may be drugged. And if we walk into the hill without understanding what waits there, this town gains 2 more coffins. You sound concerned for me. I am concerned about the paperwork. Elias smiled despite himself. Vara looked away too late. She had almost smiled back. By dawn, the buried woman could swallow water. Her pulse remained slow, but color had returned to her lips. Elias wrapped her in clean linen and moved her from the preparation table to a narrow bed behind a curtain. Vara produced a gray wool dress from a locked chest. Whose is that? He asked. Mine. He held it up. The dress was made for a far taller and broader body than the woman in the bed. She will disappear inside it. Then she will be difficult to recognize. They changed her carefully. When they finished, she looked less like someone prepared for burial and more like a sick traveler sleeping beneath too many blankets. Someone knocked on the front door above them. 3 firm blows. Vara's head lifted. Stay here. Who is it? At this hour? Someone pretending the visit is ordinary. She closed the curtain and climbed the stairs. Elias waited until her footsteps crossed the room overhead. Then he followed quietly through the hidden passage and stopped behind the panel leading into the public preparation chamber. The mayor's voice drifted down from the funeral house. He spoke with practiced warmth, asking whether the night's burial inspection had disturbed Vara. She answered that cemetery guards disturbed only those with guilty consciences. The mayor laughed. Elias had disliked that laugh when he first heard it. Now it made his hand curl around the handle of his medical bag. Our visiting doctor has gone missing, the mayor said. His bed was untouched. Perhaps he found better company. In Belgrave? Do not insult your own town. Did he come here? A pause. Doctors do not visit funeral houses until they have failed, Vara said. A poetic answer. I am an undertaker. We make ordinary statements sound expensive. The mayor moved across the floor. Elias recognized the slow rhythm of a man examining the room while pretending not to. A cabinet opened. A drawer closed. You buried the widow yesterday, he said. I bury everyone eventually. Was there anything unusual about her? She paid in advance. I meant the body. The dead are private clients. The warmth vanished from the mayor's voice. You have always survived here because I allowed the town to believe your work was useful. And you have survived because I have buried the evidence of yours. Silence. Elias slowly opened the panel. Through the narrow gap, he could see Vara standing beside her desk. The mayor faced her with one hand resting on a polished walking stick. He was older than Elias, well-dressed and silver-haired. There was nothing remarkable about him. Evil rarely had the courtesy to look unusual. 2 guards waited outside the front door. The mayor leaned closer to Vara. "Careful." "You came into my house," she replied. "You should be careful." His gaze lowered briefly to her gloved hands. Fear passed across his face. Then the front door opened. Elias entered from the street carrying his case and wearing the coat he had hidden in the yard before dawn. Both turned toward him. "Doctor," the mayor said, "we have been looking everywhere." "I went for a walk." "Through the cemetery?" "The air is excellent for thought." Vara watched him with an expression that said his lying had not improved. The mayor's smile returned. "Your room was untouched." "I fell asleep in the chapel." "The chapel keeper saw no one." "Then the chapel keeper slept more soundly than I did." Elias set the case on Vara's desk. "I came to ask the Undertaker about the death records. Her observations may help determine whether a contagion exists." "There is no need to trouble her. I can provide anything you require." "You already provided 11 records that contain the same handwriting, the same temperature, and the same time of death. Our local clerk is consistent." "Your local clerk is astonishing. Every victim died at exactly 6 minutes past midnight." Vara looked at him. He had noticed the repeated time before opening the coffin, but assumed laziness. Now it felt like a signature. The mayor tightened his hand on the walking stick. "Perhaps travel has exhausted you," he said. "You should rest." "I intend to." Elias removed his gloves. "Here." Vara's eyebrows rose. "The Undertaker has offered the upstairs guest room," he continued. "It is sensible. We will be examining the same cases." "I offered no such thing," she said. "You were about to?" The mayor looked between them. Elias met Vara's eyes and hoped she understood. If the mayor believed they were together, both would be easier to watch. But he would also hesitate to search the house while a crown doctor slept inside. "The guest room leaks," Vara said. "I enjoy rain. The mattress is hard. Good for the spine. There may be rats. Then I will finally have patients who follow instructions." Her amber eyes warmed. "Very well," she said. "He may stay." The mayor stopped smiling. "Belgrave can provide finer hospitality." "I did not come for fine hospitality," Elias replied. "I came for the truth." The words remained in the room after the mayor left. Vara waited until the guard's boots faded down the street. Then she locked the front door and turned toward Elias. "You enjoy rain?" "No." "Hard mattresses?" "No." "Rats?" "Professionally." She folded her arms. "There is no guest room." "Then where do I sleep?" "You should have considered that before moving in." The funeral house contained 1 bedroom, a kitchen, a public viewing room, and the office. The upper floor had once held 2 more rooms, but a winter storm tore away half the roof years earlier. Vara used the remaining dry space to store coffins. Elias eventually placed a folded blanket on the office sofa. "It is shorter than I am," he said. "So is the grave." "You are reassuring company?" "People usually pay me for that." They went downstairs to check the woman. She woke near noon. Her first reaction was terror. She struck Elias weakly, tore at the borrowed dress, and tried to climb from the bed. Vara entered the curtained space and removed both gloves. "Look at me," she said. The woman's eyes fixed on the Undertaker. Vara held her hands where they could be seen. You are beneath my house. You are not in the coffin. No one here will bury you. The woman's breathing slowed. Your husband? She whispered. Vara's expression answered before her words. The woman closed her eyes. A tear crossed her temple and disappeared into her hair. Elias expected Vara to offer comfort. Instead, the Undertaker sat beside the bed in silence. At first, he thought the silence cold. Then the grieving woman reached blindly outward, and Vara gave her one scarred hand. There were forms of comfort medicine never taught. After a while, Elias asked about the mayor's house. The woman remembered drinking tea. She remembered waking on a stone table beneath a painted ceiling. Silver tubes crossed the walls above her. An older woman lay behind glass at the center of the chamber, dressed in white, her hair perfectly arranged. The mayor stood beside her, whispering that one more breath would be enough. Then darkness. Did you see how he opened the chamber? Vara asked. The woman shook her head. Did anyone help him? Elias asked. Another shake. Only the mayor. That simplified the danger and made it worse. There was no accomplice to turn, no frightened servant to question. One powerful man controlled the guards, the records, the mail, and the hill beneath the cemetery. You need to leave town, Vara told the woman. The gates are watched. Not the marsh path. I cannot walk. Not today. Elias felt her pulse. Perhaps tomorrow night. Vara looked toward him. You believe we have until tomorrow? No. I believe moving her now will stop her heart. They spent the afternoon preparing. Elias wrote a false report declaring the 11 deaths consistent with a rare marsh fever, but requested 5 more days to confirm the cause. The report disgusted him, yet it bought time. Vara sent an apprentice from the coffin maker's yard to deliver it, carefully avoiding any name. Then they examined the cemetery map. It showed 80 years of graves, family plots, drainage channels, and old tunnels beneath the hill. Vara marked the 11 recent burials with pieces of charcoal. Every silver line converged upon the mausoleum. There is a service tunnel here, she said, pointing to a faded line. It was sealed before I took over the funeral house. Why? The hill collapsed. Or someone wanted privacy. The mayor's family paid for the repairs. They found the old entrance behind a cabinet in the public viewing room. Brick filled the archway from floor to ceiling. Elias tapped the mortar. Recent. Vara touched it with her bare fingers. 9 years. You can tell through stone? No. The newspaper stuffed into the gap has a date. He laughed before he could stop himself. Vara turned away, but he saw the curve at the corner of her mouth. There, he said. What? You smiled. Mortar dust affected your vision. Both eyes. A serious condition. They began removing bricks after sunset. Vara worked with a narrow pry bar, every movement controlled and efficient. Without her funeral coat, she wore a sleeveless charcoal tunic that revealed strong green arms and the branching burn scars on both hands. Elias carried each loosened brick to the corner. After the first hour, his shoulders hurt. After the second, Vara handed him water without comment. After the third, they had opened a gap large enough to feel cold air moving from the tunnel. It smelled of wet earth, night bell, and something faintly sweet. The same scent as the buried woman's breath. Elias raised the lantern. A thin silver line ran along the tunnel's ceiling toward the hill. We go now, he said. Vara blocked the opening with one arm. We agreed to wait. We agreed she could not move. We said nothing about us. The mayor visited this morning. If he finds the seal broken... A bell rang from the town square. Once, twice. Then a slow third note. Vara's face hardened. "What does that mean?" Elias asked. "A death." They listened. A fourth bell followed. Another? No. A request for the Undertaker. Vara pulled on her coat. "You cannot go alone." "The town expects me alone." "Then the town will be disappointed." The new body waited in a narrow house near the square. The victim was an elderly man who had eaten supper with the mayor less than 2 hours earlier. His family crowded the small room, crying quietly while a guard stood beside the bed. The mayor had already signed the death order. Vara approached the body. The guard watched her hands. Elias stood at the foot of the bed in his physician's coat. "I will examine him first." "The mayor has confirmed the death," the guard said. "The mayor is not a doctor. He said the fever is highly contagious." "Then you should stop breathing on everyone." The family stared. The guard's face reddened. Vara lowered her head to hide what might have been another smile. Elias listened at the old man's chest. Nothing. He checked the throat. No pulse. The pupils barely reacted to lamplight. By every ordinary measure, the man was dead. Vara removed one glove and placed her scarred palm over his heart. The guard stepped forward. "No Orc rites." "It is an examination," Elias said. "That is not medicine. Neither is your opinion." Vara closed her eyes. Seconds passed. Then her fingers moved slightly. Alive. Elias understood without words. He opened his bag and filled a syringe with a stimulant. The guard seized his wrist. "The body belongs to the town until burial." "He is not a body." "The order is signed." Elias looked at the grieving family. Fear had silenced them. They knew what happened to people who challenged the mayor. He looked back at the guard. "If he is dead, my medicine changes nothing." "And if he is not?" Vara asked. The guard's grip tightened. That was answer enough. Vara moved. She did not strike him. She simply took his thumb, turned his wrist, and guided him firmly into a chair. Before he understood, he had been released from Elias. One broad green hand rested on his shoulder. "Sit," she said. He sat. Elias injected the stimulant. Nothing happened. The family's hope began to collapse. Then the old man gasped. His back arched. Air tore into his lungs. The nearest relative screamed. Someone dropped a lamp, and Vara caught it before it struck the floor. The old man vomited violet liquid across the blanket. Elias had never been happier to see a ruined bed. The guard fled. Within minutes, half the street knew a dead man had awakened beneath the doctor's hands, while the Orc Undertaker held back the mayor's guard. By the time Elias and Vara returned to the funeral house, the story had become more dramatic. In one version, Vara called the man's spirit from the underworld. In another, Elias kissed him back to life. "I dislike this town," Elias said. "You have been here one day." "It has been a very complete day." They found the front doors open. The office had been searched. Papers covered the floor. Cabinet doors hung from broken hinges. The sofa where Elias intended to sleep had been cut open. Below stairs, the hidden panel stood wide. They ran. The buried woman's bed was empty. On the preparation table lay Vara's black glove. Pinned beneath it was a fresh sprig of nightbell. Elias reached for the flower. Vara caught his wrist before his fingers touched it. The sap enters through skin. She used metal tongs to lift the sprig and sealed it inside a glass jar. Her movements were steady, but the iron rings in her braid clicked softly against one another. Elias had learned enough to recognize the sound as anger. "How did they find the room?" he asked. They did not. The panel was open. She opened it. Vara pointed toward the floor. Bare footprints crossed the stone, unsteady but clear. The woman had walked from the bed to the passage. A second set of prints began near the preparation table. Polished boots. She was awake, Elias said, and drugged again. Near the wall, he found a cup smelling of sweet tea. Why would she drink anything from a stranger? Because the stranger did not come through the passage. Vara looked toward the ventilation grate above the bed. He spoke from there. Perhaps he said we sent him. Perhaps he said you needed help. The mayor climbed through a coal vent. Fear makes powerful men surprisingly flexible. Elias knelt beside the footprints. The woman's steps ended at the hidden panel. The boot marks continued into the burial chamber, then disappeared beside the silver tube. He took her through the tunnel, he said. Vara was already gathering lanterns. They returned to the brick opening in the viewing room. Cold air moved through the gap, carrying the sweet scent more strongly now. Elias packed stimulant, charcoal powder, bandages, and 2 small knives used for surgery. Vara brought a funeral hammer, rope, and a coil of black cloth. "Is that a weapon?" he asked, nodding toward the hammer. "It closes coffin nails." "Comforting. It can open them too." They entered the tunnel. The passage forced Elias to bend. Vara moved ahead, one shoulder nearly touching each wall. Thin silver tubes ran above them in branching lines. Some were cold, others pulsed with faint warmth. Every few yards, Vara placed a bare hand against the stone. "What do you feel?" "Fear." "Hers?" "Everyone's." The answer made the narrow darkness seem crowded. They passed beneath the first row of recent graves. Elias heard a soft sound overhead. Tap. Then silence. He stopped. "Did you hear that?" Vara raised her lantern. Tap, tap. Someone was striking the inside of a coffin. They followed the sound to a vertical service shaft. A silver pipe descended beside an iron ladder. Vara climbed first and pressed her ear against the wooden base above them. "Alive," she whispered. "Another victim?" "The man from this afternoon." The mayor had taken him from his family and buried him again. Elias climbed beside her. Together they pushed against the coffin base. It did not move. "It opens from above," Vara said. The tapping became weaker. Elias pulled a narrow saw from his case. He cut around the silver pipe while Vara used the funeral hammer to split the support boards. Soil poured through the opening. They covered their faces and kept working. At last, a section gave way. The old man's hand reached through the darkness. Vara caught it. "You are not alone," she said. They could not pull him through the narrow hole, but Elias passed water and charcoal upward. He disconnected the warm silver tube and widened the air opening. "Can you breathe?" The old man answered with 2 knocks. "We will return," Vara promised. As they descended, Elias saw pain cross her face. "You cannot save everyone at once," he said. "That sentence comforts the person leaving, not the one left behind. If we climb out now, the mayor seals the tunnel. We save one and lose the woman, along with anyone else connected to these pipes." "I know." "Then why are you angry with me?" "I am not. You are gripping the hammer hard enough to bend it." Vara looked at her hand and loosened her fingers. "I am angry because you are right. That happens often." She gave him a flat look. "Not the time?" he asked. "There may never be a time. Then I must use every opportunity." Despite the darkness, her mouth curved. They continued beneath the hill. The tunnel widened near the mausoleum. Painted tiles appeared on the floor, white once, but stained gray by moisture. The silver pipes gathered into a thick bundle and passed through a bronze door without hinges. At its center was the shape of an open hand. Vara stopped several feet away. "What is it?" She removed her right glove. The branching scars on her palm matched the lines carved into the bronze. Elias looked from the door to her hand. "You have opened this before." "Not this door." "Then where did the scars come from?" Vara turned her lantern low. "The first coffin. 9 years earlier, before the recent deaths, Vara had been an assistant in the funeral house. Her mother served as the town's healer. The mayor's wife fell ill with a wasting disease no medicine could stop. When death came, the mayor refused to accept it. He asked the healer for forbidden night bell and grave salt. She refused. 1 week later, she collapsed at supper. The town declared the healer dead before her daughter could examine her. The young orc fought the guards, but Belgrave had never needed much reason to fear an angry orc. They chained Vara inside the funeral house until the burial ended. That night, she broke free and opened her mother's grave. "She was breathing," Vara said, "just as the woman breathed tonight." I reached for her, and the silver tube burned through my hand. Elias looked at the pale branches crossing her green skin. "I pulled it free," she continued, "but the pipe had already taken too much." My mother woke for less than a minute. The tunnel disappeared around them. Elias saw only the grief Vara had carried alone for 9 years. "What did she say?" "She told me not to let them make me hard." Vara laughed once, without humor. "I have disappointed her in many ways." "No, you have known me one day. Long enough to watch you risk your life for strangers who fear you. That is duty. You held a grieving woman's hand when no one was watching." Vara looked away. Elias stepped closer. "Hard people do not sit beside coffins listening for breath. Guilty people do. Your mother's death was not your fault. You say that because doctors believe every wound can be named, cleaned, and closed. No. I say it because daughters should not have to fight an entire town to prove their mothers are alive." Her amber eyes met his. They stood close enough that his lantern light warmed the gold around her pupils. The iron rings in her braid had gone still. Elias wanted to touch her face. The desire arrived quietly, but completely, like a diagnosis he had been avoiding because the treatment frightened him. He lifted one hand, then stopped. "May I?" Vara stared at his fingers. "You ask before touching an undertaker?" "I ask before touching a woman." Something in her expression broke open. She nodded. Elias placed his palm against her cheek. Her skin was warmer than his. The edge of one tusk brushed the base of his thumb. Vara closed her eyes for a heartbeat, leaning into the touch so slightly he might have imagined it. "You are not what I expected," he said. "You expected a monster." "I expected someone less irritating." Her eyes opened. "Careful, Doctor." "I have been told that often." "You rarely listen." "I listened when you told me not to open the coffin." "You had already opened it." "Then your timing was poor." This time she laughed. The sound was low and brief, but it filled the tunnel more brightly than the lantern. Elias smiled. His thumb moved once along her cheek. Vara's gaze dropped toward his mouth. A dull impact sounded behind the bronze door. They stepped apart. The woman was still alive beyond it. Vara placed her scarred palm into the carved hand. The bronze became warm. Pain crossed her face as pale light traveled along the branches in her skin. Elias caught her wrist, but she did not pull away. The door opened inward without sound. Beyond it lay a circular chamber beneath the mausoleum. Silver tubes covered the walls like roots. They entered through 12 stone arches and joined above a glass coffin at the center. Inside lay the mayor's wife. She had been dead for 9 years and looked as though she had fallen asleep that morning. Her skin held color. Her silver hair was arranged around her face. White flowers rested over her chest without fading. The stolen breath of Belgrave moved through the tubes in soft gray light. Beside the glass coffin, the buried woman lay strapped to a stone table. A silver needle entered her arm. Her chest barely moved. Elias ran to her. Vara remained near the door, staring at the preserved woman. "My mother is here," she whispered. Along the chamber wall stood small glass vessels, each holding a pale spark. Most were dark. One still glowed faintly beneath a strip of old healer's cloth. Vara approached it with trembling hands. Elias removed the needle from the abducted woman and injected stimulant into her arm. The pulse strengthened, but the gray light continued moving through the silver network toward the central coffin. "The chamber is still taking from her," he said. "We have to break the connection." Vara lifted the funeral hammer. "Wait." Elias examined the pipes. Every line joined at a crystal valve above the glass coffin. Breaking one tube might force the pull into the others. If living victims remained buried across the cemetery, the sudden strain could kill them. "The valve controls the flow," he said. "We close it first." "How?" There was no handle, only a hollow shaped like a human heart. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel. The mayor entered through the bronze door with a lantern in one hand and a small glass vial in the other. No guards followed him. "I hoped you would understand," he said to Vara. "Of everyone in this town, I believed you might." Vara moved between him and the table. "You murdered my mother. I borrowed what she could no longer use." The pale spark inside the vessel flickered. She was alive. Only briefly. Elias had seen cruelty in war hospitals and royal prisons. The mayor's calm disgusted him more than rage would have. "Your wife is dead," he said. The mayor looked toward the glass coffin. His face softened. "Her heart beats once each night. Because you feed it the lives of others. Not their lives, only the days they would waste." Vara's tusks showed as her jaw tightened. "The husband you buried had children. They will remember him kindly. The healer you buried had a daughter." For the first time, discomfort touched his face. "Your mother knew what grief does to a person. She knew what grief should never excuse." The mayor uncorked the vial. The sweet scent of night bell spread through the chamber. "I need only one more full transfer," he said. "The doctor is healthy. His life will wake her completely." Elias reached for the knife in his case. The mayor threw the vial against the floor. Purple vapor erupted around them. Vara covered her mouth and charged through the cloud. Elias saw her reach the mayor, saw the funeral hammer knock the walking stick from his hand. Then the chamber tilted. His knees struck stone. He tried to hold his breath. Night bell burned sweetly in his lungs. Vara's strong arms caught him before his head hit the floor. "Elias." It was the first time she had spoken his name without anger or mockery. He wanted to tell her that. Darkness arrived first. Elias woke inside a coffin. He knew the shape before he opened his eyes. His shoulders touched wood on both sides. Padded cloth lay beneath his head. The air smelled of lavender, varnish, and night bell. For one terrible moment, memory failed him. Then he heard Vara's voice beyond the lid. "Do not move." His heart struck hard against his ribs. "Do not speak," she continued. "And whatever happens, do not breathe through the tube." Something cold rested beside his mouth. Silver. The mayor's voice answered from farther away. "Is he awake?" "No. You gave him the stimulant. I gave him enough to keep his heart from stopping before the transfer." Elias understood. Vara had hidden medicine inside his cheek while holding him on the chamber floor. His tongue found the bitter remains of charcoal and stimulant between his teeth. "You could have joined me years ago," the mayor said. "Your gift was wasted among graves." "My gift is the reason your victims survived." "Two survived. Many more died because you resisted what you did not understand." The coffin lid creaked as Vara's hand rested upon it. Elias felt her through the wood. Not magic, not exactly. The steady pressure of her palm told him she was there, that she had a plan, and that he had to trust a woman whose first instruction he had ignored. He would not ignore this one. The mayor walked around the coffin. "The widow remains useful. The old man too, if his heart survives the night. Once my wife wakes, I will release them." "You said that about the others. The process was imperfect. Murder often is." A sharp sound followed, the impact of a hand against skin. Elias tried to rise. Vara struck the coffin once with her knuckles. "Stay." He forced himself still. "Open the valve," the mayor ordered. "You need my blood." Silence. "The door marked me when I touched my mother's pipe," Vara continued. "The chamber knows the difference between a key and a thief. That is why your transfers fail. You have been forcing life through a closed hand." "And you can open it?" "Yes." Elias did not know whether she spoke truth or bait. The mayor came closer. "What do you want?" "The widow and the old man leave alive." "After the transfer." "Before." "You are not bargaining from strength." "Then try opening the valve yourself." Nothing moved for several breaths. At last, iron scraped against stone. A door opened. Elias heard the abducted woman coughing weakly as someone pulled her from the chamber. "The old man remains connected," the mayor said. "You receive one life. I keep one promise. Release him. Wake my wife." The coffin shifted as silver fittings locked into place beneath it. "Very well," Vara said. Her hand left the lid. Elias wanted it back. He listened to her boots cross the chamber. He pictured the bronze valve above the glass coffin, the hollow shaped like a heart, and the pale vessel holding what remained of her mother's stolen life. "Place your hand inside," the mayor said. Vara inhaled sharply. The silver tube beside Elias's mouth grew warm. Gray light seeped through the coffin seams. "Now," Vara whispered. Elias stopped breathing. The tube pulled at the air inside his lungs. It was not suction. It reached deeper, drawing warmth from his chest and memory from behind his eyes. He felt childhood sunlight, medical halls, every patient he had failed, every hand he had held at the end. The chamber touched them all, as if deciding what parts of him were worth stealing. He clenched his teeth. Outside, the mayor spoke to his wife. "Come back." The pull intensified. Elias thought of Vara laughing in the tunnel. He held that sound where the silver could not reach it. Then the direction changed. Air rushed through the tube into his mouth. Not air alone. Heat flooded his chest. His heart struck once, painfully, then again. Images that were not his flashed through his mind. An orc healer grinding herbs, a daughter standing beside a stove, scarred green hands lifting a coffin lid, years of voices trapped beneath earth. Vara cried out. The coffin lid burst open. Elias sat upright, gasping. The chamber blazed with gray-white light. Every silver tube had reversed. Life flowed away from the glass coffin and outward through the walls toward the graves. Vara stood beneath the central valve with one scarred hand, buried inside the heart-shaped hollow. Blood ran along her wrist. In her other hand, she held the small vessel that had contained her mother's spark. It was empty. The mayor stared at the glass coffin. His wife's eyes were open. For 9 years he had preserved her body. He had not preserved comfort. Terror lived in her gaze. Her lips moved soundlessly until a final borrowed breath entered her lungs. "Let me go," she whispered. The mayor pressed both hands against the glass. "No. Please." It was the first honest word spoken in that chamber. He shook his head like a frightened child. The preserved woman looked beyond him toward Vara. "Stop it." Vara's face tightened with pain. "If I release the valve now, the flow may return." Elias climbed from the coffin, legs unsteady. He reached the crystal mechanism above her hand. Light pulsed through it in time with the dying woman's heartbeat. "It follows need," he said. "What?" "The chamber is not choosing the strongest heart. It is sending life toward the weakest pull. He made her the center by sealing every other path. Can you break it? Not without killing everyone connected." The wife behind glass drew another painful breath. Elias looked at the silver lines. The mayor had treated life like water, forcing it toward one container. But bodies were not containers. They were rhythms. "The tubes must disconnect between heartbeats," he said. "All of them at once. There are 12. Your hammer." Vara understood. Elias placed 2 fingers against the glass coffin and found the pulse in the preserved woman's wrist. Weak, slow. 8 seconds between beats. Vara raised the funeral hammer toward the crystal valve. "Not yet." The mayor seized her arm. "You will not take her from me." Vara turned and drove her shoulder into his chest. He struck the floor, but his grip remained locked around her wrist. Elias counted the pulse. 1, 2. The mayor reached for a shard of broken glass. Elias kicked it away. 3. Vara tore free and lifted the hammer. 4. The chamber light dimmed, gathering for the next beat. Now, the hammer struck. Crystal shattered. For an instant, every silver tube went dark. Then light raced outward through all 12 lines and vanished beneath the cemetery. The glass coffin cracked from end to end. The preserved woman released one long breath. Her face became peaceful. This time, her chest did not rise again. The mayor crawled toward her. Vara lowered the hammer but did not stop him. He placed his forehead against the broken glass and wept. Elias felt no forgiveness for what the man had done. But he understood at last what began it. Grief had entered the chamber 9 years earlier. Cowardice had locked the door behind it. Above them, bells began ringing across Belgrave. Not the measured notes of death. Every bell. The old man was alive. The light had returned to the grave. Vara pulled her hand from the valve and collapsed. Elias caught her. Her skin was cold. The branching scars had opened across her palm, and gray light moved beneath them. "Stay with me," he said. "That is a doctor's order." Her voice was faint, but the humor in it nearly broke him. "Yes. I dislike orders." "Then consider it begging." Vara's amber eyes opened. "Better." He carried her from the chamber. The abducted woman waited in the tunnel, leaning against the bronze door. She had refused to flee without them. Together they climbed toward the funeral house. On the way, they opened the old man's coffin from beneath. His family had already dug from above, guided by his renewed knocking. When the lid lifted, dawn light spilled down the shaft. People filled the cemetery. Families stood beside opened graves. Some embraced relatives who woke coughing. Others wept over those who had been gone too long for the returned light to reach. The town guard entered the tunnel and found the mayor kneeling beside the broken glass coffin. No order protected him now. The buried woman told the crowd what she had seen. The old man told them who served the tea. Elias showed the night bell stains and the identical death records. Vara said nothing. She stood with one hand wrapped in his handkerchief, while people who had avoided her for years finally understood why she walked the cemetery after midnight. One grieving relative approached her. Vara straightened, expecting accusation. The woman simply took her uninjured hand and said, "Thank you for listening." Others followed. By sunrise, the feared Undertaker stood surrounded by living people. Elias had never seen her look more frightened. He stepped beside her. "Do not leave," she said quietly. "I was not planning to. I meant the cemetery." "So did I." She looked at him, and the noise of the crowd seemed to move farther away. "You almost died because you opened that coffin." "Technically, I almost died because I followed you into a tunnel." "You followed because you opened the coffin." "Then it was an excellent decision." Vara stared at him as if he were beyond medical help. "Why?" she asked. Elias lifted her bandaged hand carefully. "Because she was alive. Because the town knows the truth. And because I met you." The Undertaker's tusks became more visible as her lips parted. "You have known me 2 days. They have been very complete days." He touched her cheek with his free hand. This time he did not need to ask. Vara leaned into his palm and pulled him down by the front of his coat. Their first kiss tasted of rain, charcoal, and the bitter remains of Nightbell. It was not gentle at first. Too much fear stood behind it. Vara's uninjured hand gripped his shoulder, and Elias held her waist as if the earth might try to take her back. One of her tusks brushed his lower lip. He smiled against her mouth. She drew back slightly. "What?" "Nothing." "You are smiling." "Professional relief." "You are a poor liar." "I prefer truth." He kissed her again, slower this time. The crowd politely pretended not to watch. The Crown's investigators arrived 3 days later, carrying sealed orders and enough guards to make the mayor's old force suddenly loyal to justice. They found the chamber, the silver network, the Nightbell garden hidden behind his house, and 9 years of altered death records. The mayor was taken away before sunset. No one asked Vara to prepare his funeral. Elias remained in Belgrave to treat those who had awakened. Some recovered within days. Others needed weeks to regain their strength. The office sofa remained too short. After 6 nights, Vara found Elias asleep at his desk with his head on an open medical book. She stood over him for a long moment, then placed a blanket across his shoulders. He opened one eye. "Caught you." "Caught me doing what?" "Caring." "I was protecting the book from drool." "The book thanks you." She turned away. Elias caught the edge of her coat. "Vara." She looked down at his hand, then at his face. "My room has a chair," she said. "A comfortable chair?" "No." "Better than the sofa?" "Slightly." He followed her upstairs. The room held one narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the cemetery. Vara placed the chair near the stove. Elias sat. She remained standing beside him, as if uncertain why she had invited him. "Show me your hand," he said. The reopened scars needed cleaning every night. Vara usually allowed treatment in the preparation room, where steel tables and surgical cloth kept everything formal. The bedroom changed the meaning of simple proximity. She removed her glove. Elias unwrapped the bandage. The branching wounds were closing, though some pale light remained beneath the skin. "Will it fade?" she asked. "I do not know." Doctors are less impressive when honest. Undertakers are more beautiful when they stop trying to frighten everyone. Vara went still. He expected a threat. Instead, she looked toward the cemetery window. Men have called me beautiful before, she said, usually just before asking whether the tusks are real. They are clearly real. You sound disappointed. I was hoping to inspect them further. Her amber eyes returned to him. Medically? I could pretend. Vara stepped between his knees. Poorly, she said. Elias set the bandage aside and rested his hands at her waist. I have been told. She bent and kissed him. This kiss held no panic and no watching crowd. Her fingers moved into his hair. Elias traced the curve of her waist through the dark funeral coat, then stopped at the buttons near her throat. Vara felt the pause. You may, she whispered. He opened only the top button and then kissed the green skin below her jaw. A quiet breath left her. Her tusk grazed his cheek as she turned toward him. They moved slowly, learning rather than taking. There was nothing hurried in the way Vara loosened his collar or the way Elias touched the scarred lines on her hands. When she finally rested her forehead against his, the cemetery beyond the window no longer felt like a place of endings. Stay tonight, she said. In the chair? Do not ruin this. I will attempt medical silence. A miracle greater than resurrection. He stayed. In the morning, the office sofa was carried outside. By winter, the funeral house had changed. One room remained for the dead. Vara refused to treat death as an enemy simply because a cruel man had hidden murder behind it. The dead still deserved clean linen, honest mourning, and hands that did not hurry them away. The room beside it became Elias's clinic. Between the two doors, they built a warm recovery room for those who were not yet certain where they belonged. Townspeople began calling it the room of second breath. No one was buried until both the doctor and the undertaker agreed that life had truly left. They melted the silver tubes into a bell and hung it above the entrance. It rang whenever someone recovered enough to walk home. It rang often. 1 year after the first coffin opened, Elias found Vara standing over the same empty grave chamber. You are working late, he said. An undertaker's hours are decided by inconsiderate clients. He placed a small box on the coffin lid. Inside was a simple dark ring set with a piece of gray crystal taken from the destroyed valve. Vara stared at it. Is this medically necessary? Completely. What does it treat? A persistent fear that you may eventually throw me out. There is no cure for that. Then perhaps marriage will help me manage the symptoms. Her tusks showed as she smiled. You opened a coffin after I warned you not to, she said. You followed me beneath a cemetery, breathed night bell, and nearly donated your life to a dead woman. Why would I marry a man with so little sense? To supervise me. Vara lifted the ring from the box. That may require a lifetime. I was hoping it would. She slid the ring onto her finger, pulled him close, and kissed him beneath the silver bell. Years later, travelers still told frightening stories about the Orc Undertaker of Belgrave. They said she could hear breathing through 6 feet of earth and frighten death away with one golden stare. The stories were almost true. But the people who knew her understood something better. Vara had never frightened death away. She had simply learned to listen for life when everyone else had stopped. And Elias, the doctor who ignored her first warning, spent the rest of his life listening beside her. If Vara and Elias's story kept you listening, tell us whether you would have opened the coffin, and subscribe for more fantasy romances where love finds life in the darkest places.